It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, Kansans rise to the occasion to help a world in crisis. See how local innovators are using their ideas and talents to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, Wichita's iconic soccer franchise has been reborn and has wrapped up its return season. We'll take a look back at the history of the Wichita Wings and the powerful impact the team had on the community back in its heyday. Plus, in our Kansas Wild Edge report, we visit a popular destination for bird watching, especially in spring and fall. These feathered flyers put on a spectacular show. I'm Sierra Scott. Get set for a half hour of information and inspiration on this week's Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by...
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
The COVID-19 pandemic was unprecedented for the modern age and something none of us could be fully prepared for. Kansans in a position to help have scrambled to respond. Chris Frank has a story of a Wichita company that ramped up production in hopes of saving lives.
Specifically, this is for COVID-19 response.
There are 30 shipping containers in this building north of Wichita, which weren't here a week before this video was taken.
So this is a huge experiment.
And it's a risk.
It is a huge risk.
Clinic in a Can ramped up production by moving into the pavilion buildings here at the Kansas Coliseum, again because of the surge in the coronavirus COVID-19.
The reason that we're doing this craziness in the back is we're trying to build capacity. We're hoping that yes and no that they'll be utilized, but we're hoping that they don't. You know what I mean?
The company has almost tripled its staff to try to make 30 containers in 30 days. Mike Warzeski is concerned a pandemic like the COVID-19 coronavirus could overwhelm a community's hospital emergency capacity with patients.
If Wichita, Kansas gets hit with the COVID-19 virus, and we need the ability to surge up to meet the demand, that these can either be used as external ERs. So instead of, part of the issue right now is we're trying to limit patients from getting, or patient visitors from getting into our hospitals.
So you may be asking, what is a clinic in a can? Well, to start with, these metal boxes are recycled shipping containers. These are the same 20 feet long containers you'll see stacked high on cargo ships bringing in or shipping out consumer goods to and from U.S. ports.
And we're taking something that is used to transport all the durable supplies that we use every day, and we're converting them into something that is very unique. Instead of brick and mortar, we're making them out of steel boxes that can withstand hurricanes, that can withstand earthquakes.
Clinic in a Can purchases the boxes and at their 2 Wichita sites turns them into purpose-driven clinics.
And so here's one of the exam rooms here.
Corey Simons is the company's chief financial officer.
They still got the cargo doors on the outside. I'll pop open the cargo doors here. And it's still considered a shipping container because we've done nothing to the outside of it. Everything that we've done to it is on the inside. So
maintaining these as shipping containers allows them to be shipped more conveniently and economically. The insides of these metal boxes are equipped with the equipment needed for the medical functions each box is designed for. There are units designed for lab work, a maternal clinic, and primary care. Operating rooms are formed by connecting several containers as well as containers for other needs.
When you walk through, you wouldn't know that you were in 5 shipping containers. You just think you're in a normal OR room.
To do deliveries, to do dental, to make laboratories out of them, to put multiple containers together and make them into surgical suites. That's just kind of what we do here.
The company started out as Hospitals of Hope in 1998. Later, the name was changed to Clinic in a Can. Their first clinic went to Jefferson Parish, Louisiana in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina. Since then, these clinics have spent time at disasters across the U.S. and around the world. During this COVID-19 pandemic, some U.S. communities are expanding their medical response facilities with tents or expanding into other buildings.
It's great to have a tent because it's a big open space for them, but I realized that they were just putting the tents on the ground. There's no security. There's no way to disinfect a tent. There was no way to keep it cool or to heat it up or secure it.
He says by using these as external emergency rooms, it helps to keep the sick from getting inside the hospital buildings and infecting others.
These are either going to go to big cities like New York City. They could be going on a naval ship that's being deployed to another port town or port city in the United States. Or they may be set outside the ER to function as external emergency rooms to try to help screen patients and treat patients.
He says the pandemic is forcing hospitals to respond differently than they've ever done before.
Well, normally we filter everybody through the ER. They get triaged. But right now we're trying to keep people from migrating, concentrating in ERs, in their waiting rooms. And so the waiting rooms may get moved outside.
Warzeski says it's possible a patient gets treated in a clinic in a can and be sent home without even getting inside the hospital's main building. He says that would help keep others from being contaminated with the virus. These clinics are solar powered, so there's no reliance on uncertain power in a disaster area.
This one's 100% solar powered. It'll run 18 to 24 hours a day, just strictly off solar power, nothing else.
And so we're getting inquiries from the Center for Disease Control, from New York, from Toronto, from Ethiopia, from the Department of Defense, from Hospital Corporation of America.
Inquiries, yes, but he says even if those don't result in leasing or selling these clinics right away, there will always be other disasters where clinics in a can will be needed. For Positively Kansas, this is Chris Frank.
The company owner says the portable clinics will still be good for use 30 or more years after any current pandemic or other disaster passes. Another effort by Kansans to help protect people working in hospitals and clinics is the product of a 21st century technology and a desire to protect and save lives. Once again, here's Chris Frank.
The dining room table in Teddy Wisely's Wellington home is being repurposed for a fight against an invisible virus, COVID-19.
It's to help the frontline workers from getting these germs or these viruses on them.
Those frontline workers in healthcare, emergency first responders, and others are unable to distance themselves from the public, including those suffering from the virus. That closeness puts those workers at a much higher risk for getting sick than for those in the general public. With the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic came the great outcry for personal protective equipment, PPE for short. The need for face masks, face shields, even hand sanitizer skyrocketed for those fighting the battle on the front lines. As people became aware of the needs, innovative people like Teddy Wisely figured out ways they could supply the demands.
I was at first trying to figure out what I could do to help out friends and family.
Friends and family, he says, because Wisely is a Wichita Police Department sergeant and his wife is an occupational therapist, workers who are in close contact with the public. Wisely saw that volunteers in other parts of the world were making face shields with 3D printers like this one. So he started a local effort with other 3D printing enthusiasts he's connected with to make face shields.
So what I do is I collect them from the different groups of individuals and 3D printing labs, like Wichita State University Innovation Lab.
This is the WSU Innovation Lab Wisely refers to. It's in the John Bardo Center on the WSU Innovation Campus. Normally, this room would be full of engineering students working on projects, but with classes dismissed due to the virus, these machines are free to be repurposed to make face shields.
3D printing enthusiasts in the city have banded together and worked with us to create a decent method of production.
Nathan Smith is Project Innovation Hub Manager for WSU's College of Engineering. Teddy Wisely, a WSU grad, was directed to contact Smith to see if they could collaborate on making face shields with their 3D printers.
When the shortage became understood at a community level, we all decided to get together and realize that if we get enough people involved, we can start to at least fulfill some of the shortages we're seeing in the Wichita Metro.
There are costs involved, so Wisely approached the Via Christi Foundation, offering to make face shields, but asking the foundation to pay the cost for materials.
We readily agreed. It took us no time to say, yes, we're on board with that. And within a matter of 2 or 3 days, we started receiving face shields. The 3D process is slow. It does take some time, but with so many people working it and Teddy's great coordination, we're getting a supply each and every day.
85% of the face shields go to Via Christi facilities, 15% go to first responders.
The box that I'm putting together right now is enough parts to make 149 face shields. And then we have, at Wichita State, we have another 125 parts that are ready to go today.
These face shields give the wearer a second line of defense against the virus besides a face mask. And speaking of face masks, IPECO is a global company which makes airplane seat covers. The company's Wichita operations turned to making face masks for Via Christi's hospitals. Due to the current slowdown in airplane production because of the pandemic, the company had time to make the masks. It would make 1,000 masks a day until the normal supply chain could catch up. It's another example of community involvement to fix a problem.
This, the spirit, the can-do spirit that Wichitans really have and that has served our community well for the last over 100 years is really coming into play during this time.
That can-do spirit is showing up at the Wichita Brewing Company. Wichita Brewing Company would normally be making craft beers to be sold in their tap rooms and restaurants, but those were closed due to the pandemic. So instead, they're canning for liquor store and grocery store sales.
The Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office reached out to us asking if we were capable of making hand sanitizer.
The brewery was capable, says co-owner Jeremy Horn, but needed to get the regulatory permits and licensing to do so, which it did. The brewery now had the capacity to mix up hand sanitizer because it wasn't selling beer to bars and restaurants. These large tanks are typically used to ferment beer.
So now with a couple of empty tanks we've got here, we're adding the ingredients that are making our hand sanitizer.
The brewery sources the needed materials to mix up the sanitizer. The mix consists of 200 proof alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, glycerol, and distilled water.
Don't drink this stuff, right?
Not for drinking.
Volunteers come in to fill hundreds of bottles.
You know, there's so much negativity and bad news. It's just nonstop. Coronavirus deaths and just so much bad news out there. Having, you know, a project like this that's providing a benefit and is a positive thing has been good for, you know, just good for our attitude, good for morale around here. It's been a fun, nice, enjoyable thing to do.
Horn says they've sent sanitizer orders to clinics, hospitals, law enforcement agencies all over the state. They have some bulk orders as well as small orders to smaller clinics.
We sent nearly 750 gallons to Sedgwick County.
But he says the brewery is not allowed to sell the sanitizer to the general public.
You've got people making face masks and face shields and hand sanitizer. It happens so quickly. It's pretty impressive that so many various industries kind of were able to do their own thing and provide, you know, a really essential, critical benefit as timely as possible.
There are simply too many individuals and companies responding to the pandemic needs to list them all. It shows the positive ways people rise up and find ways to meet challenges brought on by an unforeseen crisis. For Positively Kansas, this is Chris Frank.
So in a time of critical need, help came from workers in local companies and a university lab to individuals working in their homes, all making a positive difference in the lives of fellow Kansans. The rebirth of the Wichita Wings soccer team was a big success in the first season. The Wings were preparing to host the league playoffs and championship, and then it was all canceled because of COVID-19. But as Jim Grayway shows us, the strong start by the new franchise is reviving memories of the glory days.
If you're not old enough or were not around Wichita in the 1980s and early 90s, you may not be familiar with this part of the city's history. It was a time when the fastest growing sport in America had taken Wichita by storm. And right there on national television was a team called the Wichita Wings. Fast-paced and action-packed, there was a time when indoor soccer was the hottest ticket in Wichita.
One of the most exciting things I've ever witnessed.
Fans dressed in team colors of orange and blue raised the roof off the jam-packed Kansas Coliseum for every game.
Chapman shoots! Score! Score! He scored! He scored! Chapman has won it for the Wichita Wings!
Wichita appeared on the national sports stage, finally a major league city.
The idea of a team in Wichita that's competing against New York City, LA, Chicago, Houston, it was such a big deal because of that.
The Wichita Wings took off in 1979 and soared in what was the nation's premier professional soccer league.
Let's get some music, let's get some disco lights, let's get some cheerleaders, let's make this a big event.
They made the playoffs their first year.
Tim O'Brien and Michael Ramalis wrote a book about this team, which holds a unique, powerful, and endearing place in Wichita sports history and conjures many glorious memories.
Professionally, the most important franchise in Wichita's history by far, because they were the first major league professional team in Wichita. The Major Indoor Soccer League was the highest level of soccer in North America in the 1980s.
The Wings, in a lot of ways, it was my childhood. My family went to our first game in November of 1982. It was opening night. I had never been taken to an event like that in my young life. The Kansas Coliseum, sea of orange and blue, screaming, loud. I couldn't believe what my parents were doing to me. My ears were just popped by then. But it began a love affair that lasted through my elementary school years until my early high school years.
Live from the Kansas Coliseum in Wichita, the Central Division Finals. The Wichita Wings host the Houston Summit.
The Wings made the playoffs almost every season in the early years.
2-1, the Wings lead it. Barton back on the return, a rebound in front. Chapman is there, a drive and a goal.
But it wasn't just winning games that made them so popular. The Wings didn't just play for Wichita, they were part of Wichita.
They're involved in almost every phase of community activity that I can think of. They're tremendous. They go around to all the schools and for soccer clinics, all the surrounding communities like Newton, Hutchinson, Augusta, El Dorado run soccer clinics all year, and they have done it for the past 2 years. And the kids just love them when they come out, and it's very different to go to a schoolyard And it used to be all your heroes were in New York, Miami, anywhere else in the world but here. And now you go out there and everybody wants to be Jimmy Ryan, Norman Piper, Mike Dowler, whoever. They want to be somebody that plays right here and right in their own town.
I think when we were growing up, we all had heroes, but it's nice to know the heroes. You know, you don't get to know the players like a George Brett or a Hal McRae or somebody like that, but here you get to know the players. They know you by name, and even at my age, I still enjoy it.
Despite their popularity, the team never made a profit. After all, these were the world's best soccer players. They earned six-figure salaries. But the team's owners, who included Pizza Hut founder Frank Carney, were not in it to make money.
If you were anybody in Wichita, you owned a piece of the Wings. When people would invest in the Wings, a lot of times it was like investing in the opera. When you make a donation to the opera, you don't really expect a return. And that's the way they kind of approached it with people. They said, look, this is good for the city of Wichita. It brings us publicity nationwide, but this is not something that you're probably going to make money on.
Wichita's taking a 1-0 lead.
The owners were happy, the fans were happy. So what happened?
Later in the 80s and into the early 90s, the MISL no longer had a national television contract.
Turns out many of the teams in other cities were not as popular, and national TV ratings lagged.
They had been on USA Network and on ESPN. When they lost that contract, they lost a lot of the publicity nationwide. Fewer people started going to games, and then it became sort of like the ball rolling down the hill.
The best players started moving over to America's new outdoor soccer league that formed in 1993. That quickly became the majors. Indoor soccer league was suddenly the minors. The Wings lasted another 8 years. By the time the team folded in 2001, it was the longest-running professional soccer franchise in U.S. history.
It was a pretty good accomplishment for Wichita.
Now all that's left of Wichita's only major league sports team are some aging players and coaches who still live in town, some old souvenirs, and many memories. But for many people, those memories are glorious ones. And O'Brien and Romales say the story of the Wings is about more than just soccer.
This is such an important part of Wichita's history in the 1980s because it really, the story of the Wings is the story of Wichita coming together to support this local soccer team that did wonderful things on a national stage.
It's a moment in time in Wichita's history where I think it brought out the best in this city because the Wings, it was a community effort. It needed everybody's involvement. One of the goals with our book was to show, what this city was capable of. And why can't it be capable of something similar in the future, whether it has to do with a sports team or anything else that this city could get behind.
That book has inspired a documentary film called God Save the Wings. It recently premiered at Wichita's Orpheum Theater. Cheyenne Bottom's wildlife area near Great Bend is considered one of the state's top destinations for birds and bird watchers. In this week's Kansas Wild Edge report, Mike Blair shows us why visitors from across the globe visit each year.
You wouldn't expect it from a sea of grass. No, not to harbor an ocean of water. It's a paradox. More than 60 square miles of perpetual wetlands in America's heartland prairie. But it's a place well known to winged travelers who course the ancient skyways between summer and winter homes. It's a great oasis that calls them down to feed and rest. And it's a treasure of Kansas. Cheyenne Bottoms, famed through history as a wondrous resource, wildlife haven, and hunting ground, is first and foremost a natural harbor of interior migrants. And it's not just ducks and geese. As many as 45% of North America's shorebirds stop here in spring migration. At least 350 of the 475 bird species reported in Kansas have been seen in this premier basin. Perching birds, wading birds, seabirds, aerialists, waterfowl, raptors. All these and others offer spectacular viewing opportunities during seasonal flights. Cheyenne Bottoms holds designations as a wetlands of international importance, a Western Hemispheric shorebird reserve site, and a globally important bird area by various bird conservation groups. And birders from across the continent and world visit to witness its annual bird movements. Up to 90,000 users visit the wildlife area each year, and it is one of Kansas's most important public use areas. Visit for yourself. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our address if you have a story idea. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.